Hello students, welcome back to Accounting 2402. This is Principles of Managerial Accounting. This is Dr. Mercado speaking. I hope all of you are doing well and are excited to begin week number 5, in which we're going to be covering chapter 19, which deals with support department and joint cost allocation. I cannot emphasize it enough. Please make sure that you read the chapter, that you review all of the different examples, the different diagrams provided in your book before you attempt your homework problems. If not, you are going to be completely lost. Also, some or the majority of these problems have some short videos embedded within Cengage. Please review those videos for some sort of guidance to help you complete your homework. Now, in this particular chapter, we're going to deal with support departments, which are basically departments not directly involved in the production process, but rather provide some necessary services for making the products. Okay, all of the direct costs of a support department are traced to the department, and indirect general factory overhead is then distributed to the support department. Now, both direct and indirect support departments are considered indirect costs of production, and these costs are subsequently allocated to the production department. Okay. Now, support departments' costs are applied directly to products using either a single plant-wide rate or are allocated to production departments using multiple production department rates or activity-based costing. Now, of course, allocating using a single plant-wide rate is very simple. And allocating using the production department rate or activity-based costing is more complex, but it is also more accurate. So some companies rather choose to go a little bit more into the complex route, but get more accurate numbers. Okay. Now, these methods require distributing overhead costs to all departments or activities, then allocating the support department costs to the production departments or activities, and finally applying costs to products. Now, the three commonly used methods for allocating support department costs to production departments or support activity costs to production activities are the direct method, the sequential method, and the reciprocal services method. So those are the three methods that we're going to be covering in this chapter. Basically, the direct method moves support costs directly to production departments or activities without recognizing any inter-support department service cost. The sequential method takes into account some, but not all inter-support department service costs. And then finally, the reciprocal services method accounts for all inter-support department service costs. Okay, there's a lot of information covered in this chapter about the different support department and the allocation of such support department cost into the production process. So it's very, very important that we read the chapter before we do anything. Okay, now let me jump in. I am going to go over a series of problems that you have for homework. I'm going to go over some of them, not all of them, to hopefully help you complete your homework assignment. Okay. Now, the first exercise that I'm going to cover is BE 19.3. This is basic exercise 19.3. Okay. I've got it here for you. Okay. Now, it says, this deals with support department cost allocation using the reciprocal services method. It says Brewster Toy Maker produces toys for children. The toys are produced in the molding and assembly departments. The janitorial and security departments support the production of the toys. Costs from the janitorial department are allocated based on square feet. Costs from the security department are allocated based on asset value. Relevant department information is provided in the following table. Okay, and then they give us the information for the janitorial department, security department, molding department, and assembly department, the square feet, the asset value, and the department cost. Now, they say using the reciprocal services method of support department cost allocation, determine A, the percentage of janitorial costs that should be allocated to the security department, and B, the percentages of security costs that should be allocated to the janitorial department. Okay. Now let's remind ourselves, what is a reciprocal services method? This is basically a method of allocating support department costs to production department that considers all inter-support department services. Okay. So I set up these little tables. They're asking us to figure out, for letter A, the percentage of janitorial costs that should be allocated to the security department. Okay. I'm highlighting what they're asking us to do, security. But you know what? I'm going to calculate for all three departments so I can be able to get my numbers, okay? And the same thing for letter B, they're asking for the percentage of security costs to be allocated to the janitorial. So the janitorial, the one highlighted in yellow, is what we're calculating, but I need to calculate the other two departments as well so I can be able to get my numbers all right. And it's always better to have more information than less information in case management wants to know, well, okay, what about the molding department? Or what about the assembly department? We've got that information already calculated. Okay. So before we begin, it's very important to know that support departments never allocate their own costs to themselves. So if you notice, we've got the janitorial, security, molding, and assembly. Okay. For requirement A, they're asking us to calculate the percentage of janitorial cost that should be allocated to the security department. If you notice, I don't have janitorial included in letter A. Why? Because that is what I'm distributing. I'm distributing the cost of my janitorial cost over into the other departments that is not janitorial. We never allocate janitorial costs to janitorial services, okay? So this is the cost that's going to be distributed to the other three support departments, okay? Now, if we go back, it says here, right here, let me go ahead and mark it. The security department are allocated, okay, costs from the janitorial and security department support the production of the cost. Costs from the janitorial department are allocated based on square feet, okay? So that is going to be our driver right there, square feet, okay? So costs from the janitorial department are allocated based on square feet. We're going to look at the square feet, okay? Right here, we've got square feet. And we're going to look at the square feet. Oh, sorry about that. We're going to look at the square feet for security, molding, and assembly. Because we are distributing the cost of the janitorial department, we are not including their costs into the equation. We're only calculating for security, molding, and assembly. Okay? So, for security, we're going to look at the square feet. How many square feet did we have for the security department? We had 1,600. Okay? For the molding department, we had 1,600 square feet as well. And for the assembly department, we had 4,800 square feet. So I'm going to get a total. This is what we're going to be allocating based on. We're allocating based on square feet. Okay? So, now that I've got my total, I've got my security, my molding, and my assembly, I can get my percentage that I'm going to allocate to each of those support departments. I'm going to get my total square feet for that department divided by my total overall square feet. Okay? Now I'm going to anchor the 8,000 because that is not going to change. I'm always going to divide by 8,000. So it'll be 1,600 divided by 8,000 for security, 1,600 divided by 8,000 for molding, 4,800 divided by 8,000 for assembly. Okay, so once I do that, I can drag my formula down. And then I can get my totals. Now I don't want these, no fill. Okay, so I can then get my total down here. That should give us 100%. Yes, it does. Okay, let me just put an underline here, right here, bottom border. Okay, so let's recap what we did. It's telling us here that the cost from the janitorial department, whatever the whatever the department cost is, we're going to allocate it based on square feet to the other support departments. So what we're going to do, we know that we don't allocate to ourselves. So the janitorial cost is not included down here because we don't allocate our own cost to ourselves. We allocate our costs to other departments. So whatever is spent on my department, which is the janitorial services, whatever I spend, it's because I used up my time and my resources to clean the security department, the molding department, and the assembly department. My job is to support their departments so they can get the job done, okay? So the problem stated that the allocation was based on square feet. We look at our square feet and we get the square feet for security, 1,600, molding, 1,600, and assembly, 4,800. I get my total, which is 8,000. Okay. Now I divide, okay, your respective department, which is a security for 1,600. I divide 1,600 divided by 8,000. Okay. So let's see what that gives us. 1,600 divided by 8,000. That gives me 0.20, and if I multiply by 100, that gives me 20%. Okay. The same thing for molding. Okay, it'll be 1,600 divided by 8,000 times 100. That gives me 20%. Assembly, 4,800 divided by 8,000. That gives me 0.6 times 100. That's 60%. Okay. Now, for letter A, they're asking you the percentage of janitorial costs that should be allocated to the security department. So that is why I highlighted security. So what's going to happen is, depending on the cost spent on the janitorial services, whatever dollar amount it is, I'm going to allocate 20% of it to security. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Now, they're not asking this in the problem, but if they were to ask, how much would we allocate to molding? That would be 20%, and then 60% to assembly, okay? I've calculated them all for the three departments, but the only one we need is for security for now. That's what the problem is asking us. So for security department, the percentage of janitorial costs that should be allocated to the security department is 20%, okay? That is the amount. Now, for letter B, it says, what is the percentage of the security costs that should be allocated to the janitorial department? Now, because we are allocating the security department's cost, we're going to allocate to the other three departments, which is janitorial, molding, and assembly. Remember, we don't allocate our costs to ourselves. The security department is responsible for maintaining the security in the janitorial department, the molding department, and the assembly department. So their cost needs to be distributed to the other three support departments available. Okay. Now for this one, let's see. It says that for the security departments, the costs are allocated based on asset value. Okay. So each allocation has its own basis. So this is asset value. And I'm going to go ahead and now we're going to do asset value. That's going to be our driver right there. Asset value. Okay. So let's do the same calculations, but now based on asset value. So we're going to look at janitorial. How much do we have in asset value? We have 200. For molding, we have 1,800. And for assembly, we've got 2,000. Okay. Once you copy the information from the problem provided, 200, 1,800, and 2,000, remember to always exclude the actual department that you're allocating the cost for. Since we are allocating the security cost, we don't allocate security costs to ourselves. Once we're done, we get the total for that particular column. Okay. And that's just why I love using Excel. Just easy to do. So my total is 4,000 for my asset value. Once again, I'm going to get my proportion. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide my asset value for janitorial services divided by my total asset value. And I'm going to anchor my Q14 by putting my cursor in front of the Q and then pressing F4. That anchors my calculation. And what does that mean? That means that I'm going to be dividing 200 by 4,000. The 4,000 is going to be anchored. It's going to be fixed. Okay, I'm going to divide 1,800 divided by 4,000. And I'm going to divide 2,000 by 4,000. So that way that 4,000 stays or remains constant. Okay. So once you have that, you can just drag it down. Okay. And I am not going to format those. Okay. So they're asking us here to, sorry about that, to calculate, wrong cell right here. There we go. So for letter B, they're asking us to calculate the percentage of security costs to be allocated to the janitorial department. Okay, the janitorial department. Okay, so in this case, what we did is for the janitorial department, regardless of the cost of the security department, I'm going to allocate 5% of my expense to the janitorial department. Why? This is based on the asset value. If the asset value changes, then of course your percentage allocation will also change. But based on the information provided, if your asset value remains at 200, 5% of the cost for the security department is going to be allocated to the janitorial department. 45% is going to be allocated to the molding department and 50% to the assembly department. The allocation is driven by the asset value. The higher your asset value, the higher your allocation. Okay? So that is what they're asking us to do here. So for the two requirements, letter A, the percentage that will be allocated to the security department will be 20%. That's your janitorial cost. The security cost that to be allocated to your janitorial services will be 5%. Okay? And of course, you've got the data for the other departments as well, in case management decides they want to know that information as well. Okay? I just like to calculate everything for all of the departments and be prepared. Management might ask you for security and janitorial services, but maybe once they're in a meeting and they're discussing these numbers, then they'll say, well, how much is being allocated to the assembly department? Well, Mr. Manager, I need to go back and recalculate. Okay, that way you have all of your numbers here. You know exactly what is being allocated to each department, and that way a conversation can be going, having information for the whole picture. Okay, so that is basically it. It's just grabbing your data based on whatever the driver is. For janitorial cost is square feet. For security cost is asset value. Dividing the cost or the driver, which would be square feet or asset value, by the total to be able to get your proportion allocation percentage. Okay, so that is basically it for BE 19.3. Okay, until next time. Thank you.